I think that gets really hard. I think the other thing that gets really hard that Mark alluded to as well is that if we have our phones in front of us as parents all the time, we can't really expect or then tell our kids to do something different. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think a lot of times we need to use technology as a tool. And for me, with having young kids, it might be something to occupy them while I'm making dinner. It might be saying to occupy them while I'm on a Zoom call. And so again, I think it's okay to do that and to be honest about that and not to beat yourself up about that. But then at the same time, not to put unrealistic expectations on you or on your child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there will be an aspect of virtual life that even as we return to normal, whatever that's going to be, that will stick around. We talk a lot with our high school students that they need to anticipate having video interviews moving forward for jobs. And some of us as adults have never had a video interview, but the students in high school and moving on to college and careers after this will definitely have video interviews, and they just have to be aware of that. It's the world we live in.
Exactly. So I want to talk a little bit about screen time and developing brains. And I pulled up some different things that I found on the internet here. And a lot of these are really kind of flashy, scary headlines about what too much screen time can do to a developing brain. And so you can see here, MRIs show screen time linked to lower brain development in preschoolers. What does too much screen time do to children's brains? Can too much screen time change your brain? These are really scary, scary things here. Another one, kids and screens, effects of screen time on brain development. What's interesting is a lot of these articles here are all summarizing some of the same research findings from the same study that's out there. And in doing this, I think, again, kind of selfishly, what I was hoping was that I was not rotting my children's brains by putting them in front of Netflix or giving my 3-year-old my old math book so he could kind of do work, as he calls it, and see patients while he's watching YouTube videos. And I really did not find overwhelming evidence that having screens in front of kids is a bad thing or leads to underdeveloped brains. There's still a lot that we don't know. And so this here is the study. This was published in JAMA Pediatrics, which is one of the leading journals in medicine and in pediatrics. And what these researchers looked at was the association between screen-based media use and brain white matter integrity in preschool age children. So basically what they're looking at is, does screen time use have an impact on how brains are developing? This was all based on questionnaires that they did with parents to look at how much screen time their kids were getting and what kind of screen time they were getting. I think you can go to the next slide here. So what we know is that there is this emerging research that suggests that too much screen time can impact brain development, okay? But that's kind of all that we know right now. And what does that really mean? First of all, I want to reassure people and reassure myself not to panic here. We don't really know what these changes actually mean. So we can see that there are some changes in brain development, but we don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, if that has any effect on how kids are really kind of developing and what their behavior is looking like outwardly. And what I think I really took away from some of the research that I was doing and kind of digging into some of the work that's been done in this area, and just what I know as a psychologist as well, is that the quality of the screen time is actually more important than the quantity. So it's very different if your 2 or 3 or 4-year-old is parked in front of the TV or in front of your old computer that you gave them for hours on end. And again, that is something that I have done. That is something that I will continue to do in the future. So I'm not passing judgment there. That is a different type of activity than if you're sitting down with them and maybe playing a game on an iPad, or if you're interacting with them, or if you're watching a TV show together and you are having a conversation about what you're seeing in the TV show. So really that kind of interaction piece is really important. And that kind of screen time is different than if a child is just kind of sitting passively in front of a TV or in front of a screen. You can go to the next slide. So as I was saying, this is what we know for sure. So when a child's brain is developing really, really early in those first few years of life after they're born, what happens is all the cells in the brain are coming together and making lots of new connections. So they're learning about the world, they're, crawling around, they're taking in things through all their different senses. If you think about, a baby in the first year or two of life. And what's really important, and again, what we know, regardless of screens and technology, we've known this for a long time, children need a lot of diverse experiences. So when you have a baby, you expose them to lots of different things and sounds and colors and noises and lots of talking and interaction. There have been studies that have looked at the amount of words that children were exposed to in the first few years of life. And what they did was they had kids wear around these little recorder boxes, and they would record all of the talking that would happen with them during the day. And kids whose parents or caregivers talked more and used more words, those kids went on to have larger vocabulary. They went on to ultimately become better readers. So what we know is that those experiences that kids have early in life are really, really important. Interacting with your child on a screen, like I said, is better than your child watching alone. But watching life on a screen is not the same as watching things in real life. So again, going back to this study where the kids wore these recorders, they could tell the difference between a caregiver or an adult talking to the child or talking around the child versus having the TV show on where there was talking going on there. So there was a difference there. I think another thing that's really important is a balance. That's what Mark and I, when we were planning this, we talked a lot about finding a balance. And balancing that screen time and screen free time. But if you're going to say, okay, iPads are going away, TV's going off, we need to give our children something else to do. And it's not enough to just say, all right, go find something to do. I don't care what you do, but we got to turn the TV off. I think that's not really fair to kids, especially young kids, because they might not know what else to do. And screens and technology is so stimulating and so engaging, it could be hard to think of something else to do. And the best thing, if screen time is highly motivating to your child, find a way to use it as a reward. They can earn screen time for good behavior. You can have a sticker chart. They earn stickers when they get so many stickers for good behavior, then they get extra screen time. So lots of ways that you can kind of manipulate this and use it to your advantage. Now, the other thing that we're going to talk about, and this is where I kind of lean on Mark a little bit, is screen time in bigger brains. So as kids get older, the risks of screen time kind of change a little bit. So what we might see are more risky behaviors, social media use, overuse, and obsessive behaviors, and emotional and behavioral changes. So as the brain is developing throughout childhood, we're seeing less of those kind of rapid forming connections, and we're seeing more of kind of the impact, maybe the emotional and behavioral impact of screen time.
So the reasons why children choose social media, and we'll get into a lot of what we went through the last slide very quickly, because this really is, the tips and things are focused a little more on adolescence, because quite honestly, that's when parents are choosing to get involved. That's when they're buying smartphones. That's when kids are getting interested in apps. And when they're little, they pretty much do what we hand to them. We turn the app on, we give them the iPad, and then we sit back in awe when they can manipulate the iPad better than we can. But the truth is, they learn this from us. They learn this because social media and technology is just part of the fabric of the world. You can't hide from it. And as Christine said, there are many wonderful things that technology give. We would not be having this meeting right now in the environment we're in with COVID without technology. So we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to embrace the world in which we live, and we have to help our children do that as well. They see us use it. Again, it's self-explanatory. Most behaviors that children learn are from the adults around them that they are exposed to and that they are close to, whether that be teachers, whether that be parents, whether it be caregivers, grandparents. That's who they look at. They want to feel, this is more the adolescent, they want to feel older and more mature. They want to be like the adults. They see mom, they see dad doing these cool things online, scanning groceries at the store, and they want to do that. Let's be honest, it's cool. It's one of the reasons I like it. It's fun. It's cool. It's great to get a new gadget. Apple relies on that. Every year they come out with a new iPhone. We don't ever need an iPhone, but we want to get the newest one. Convenience, I think, is a big driver for us in social media and technology. It just makes things easier, but it doesn't always make things better. We have to weigh that. Um, they have a bigger need during the adolescent years. They start to depend more on their peers for validation. The brain and the social development shifts more to, I'm concerned about what my friends are thinking about me. If you've ever tried to go shopping with a teenager, you know exactly what this is like, because you can suggest the most beautiful outfit in the world, but it's not what they want. They want to wear exactly what everyone else is wearing. Same thing is true in other aspects of life. It's somewhat funny to me how we kind of get surprised when the same things we see going on in other aspects, whether it be dating or clothing or friend relationships, when those are also manifested around technology, because kids are still the same. The tools around us are changing, but their development is still the same. So good, bad, or indifferent, however you feel about technology, it's part of our lives, and we want to help you learn to embrace it and learn some things to help your kids navigate these waters of technology a little bit better.
And I will also add there too that those last points that you made, Mark, I think are really important. And this is a normal thing that happens for kids. They gravitate towards their friend group. They form healthy peer relationships. They pull away from their parents as they're forming their own identity. That is a normal thing. That's what we want to have happen. Just like Mark said, the tools and the mechanism for that is a little bit different now, but that's a normal part of healthy adolescent development. And the other thing, and I say this to parents I work with all the time, what was it like when you were a teenager? How did you feel about your parents? What were the kind of decisions like that you were making? You know, I think as we get farther away from that point in our own life, we kind of forget that, you know, and you're the parent that's dorky and uncool and at the, you know, at the store with your child that doesn't want to be seen with you, but that's probably how you felt when you were their age too. So I think it's good to kind of take a step back sometimes and put yourself in their shoes, even though, you know, for I think probably all of us in this group, when we were a teenager, we didn't have the same technology or the access to this type of technology, but really those main concepts are the same.
Absolutely. So true. The other thing that has changed is this makes me laugh because I think about this a lot, that we all, as adolescents, the brain is not fully developed, and you combine a not fully developed brain, which, oh, by the way, usually doesn't start to develop some of that, the brain development until age 24, 25. So adolescence really can be extended quite further than we anticipate. And you combine that with tough impulse control, the ability to be liked by others. And it really is just kind of a witch's brew of kids are going to make mistakes. I'm just glad that mistakes I made when I was an adolescent didn't get recorded on video, didn't get recorded on a screen where people can pull it up 40 years later. Because the truth is, everything our kids do right now online that they're sharing, a lot of that is being recorded. And you just have to be aware of that. And we as parents have to educate our kids that the world we live in now, because of technology, is a little bit different, that mistakes in some ways get relived and replayed, sometimes years and years later, because of the technology that we have now. And because, quite honestly, of our love affair with video, our love affair with phones. I think it's funny that we even call the smartphone a smartphone. It should be called a smart camera or a smart video machine, because that's predominantly how we use them. So this is something I think as parents, again, like Christine said, we have to think back to what life was when we were growing up, and we did dumb things. We did dumb things all through high school and all through college. The difference was we weren't capturing it on film to look at years later. One thing that is also important to remember is technology, again, because it's recording everything, it is also recording all of your information, all of your demographics, all of the sites, all of the IP addresses that you and your child go to, because your data is for sale. It's really come into the forefront the last couple of years. We've actually had some congressional hearings about this. But every time you click the little I agree button at the bottom of that 7-page legalese that you've just scrolled through and didn't read anything, the moment you hit I agree, you are agreeing to the terms of that app, that company, that internet provider, that the data they are collecting from you, They can save and they can use it as they see fit. This includes pictures, this includes posts, this includes everything. And your data is for sale. There is big advertising dollars, billions of dollars a year wrapped up in your data. Just for instance, last night, I'm looking for a new pair of running shoes. I need to get a new pair of running shoes. So I was on Amazon and I was online looking at some running stores. I shouldn't be shocked that this morning, what were all my advertisements on my Twitter feed once I got to work? Running shoes, because that's the way the behind the scenes works with the data. It's picked up that I, in my IP address, even on my home computer at home, was looking for running shoes. I shouldn't be surprised when a totally separate device, my phone this morning with my Twitter account, that I'm getting flooded now with advertisements for running shoes, because that's our data. It's all being sold all the time. A lot of these things I kind of mentioned, we don't really have smartphones. When we're giving our children a device, to call it a phone is really a misnomer. The pocket computers that we have now, when the space shuttles were launching in the 80s, could have powered the space shuttle. They are so powerful. They have so many features on them. And to be honest, most of our kids are not using the phone feature at all. They are using texting. They are using social media. They are using video. They are using cameras far more than they are ever making phone calls. This generation would much rather text one another than pick up the phone and have a conversation. We have internet access 24/7. That internet access also has access to us 24/7. It's awareness that we just have to coach our kids through. Truth be told, some children and many adults are not ready to have this much access to immediate information, and they're really not ready to have this much access and accessibility to share their opinions at all times with all people. And just look at the past couple of years with our presidential election and where politics has gone and where some of the things going on in our society have gone. And everybody has a bully pulpit now. And our children are being raised in an environment where, truth be told, not everyone's opinion matters. And we have to help our children discern, okay, then whose opinion should I listen to? If everyone's out there sharing their opinion, whose opinions are valid and whose opinions aren't? We have to help them learn how to continue with human behaviors, natural human behaviors and human development and human growth in the world of technology. We also have to help them develop healthy digital habits. Let's be very honest. A lot of what we do online is time wasting. It's not because we actually have to go shopping or we actually have to participate in school. We're looking on YouTube because we have time to kill. You know, we're looking through our social media feed because we have time to kill. The conversation we need to have with our kids is really about how are we using our time? What are we doing with our downtime? Are there other things that we could be doing instead of looking at TikTok or looking at YouTube video after YouTube video? There's nothing inherently bad about it, but it's a distraction. And a lot of times it's a time waster. We need to learn to be intentional about that.
And again, you know, I think that if we as adults are finding ourselves having trouble figuring out what to do with our time, and it's much easier and more stimulating and more enjoyable to be on technology, the same thing's happening for our kids. And so that's where I think it's really helpful to be able to provide those alternatives of other things and to really kind of be the scaffolding that helps them to develop these healthy habits.
Absolutely. One of the best times I learned to talk to my teenagers is when they're in the car with me. Turn the radios off, and technology is not just phones, but turn the radios off, turn the musics off, have them take their iPods out of their phone or their ear pods and have a conversation with your child. Most of the time, they're not going to open the door and jump out. Okay. So you have them captured for a moment where they need to talk back, and they desperately want to discuss things with you, even if they don't act like it, even if their answers are yes, no, I don't know. Continue to be the talker, continue to be the person to model those behaviors with your adolescents and with your teenagers, because those are things they will need to do as an adult. Have conversations with people. So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we need to separate, especially with COVID, um, why social media or why technology. This is a very good example. For the next hour and a half, we're going to be on a screen, but it's purposeful. It has a reason. There's a valid reason for using your screen. We have to have those articulations with our children, and also model and show that to them. When they see you're on your phone, are they assuming that you're just chatting with someone and you're wasting time? When in reality, what you could be doing is creating a grocery list. Okay. Show them that. Show them your phone and say, hey, I found this really cool app that allows me to do my grocery list. So, when I'm at Kroger later today, I can just click through my check boxes and make sure we got all the food we need. So let them know that technology is beneficial. It's not always just for pleasure or just for a distraction or just to talk to a friend, that there really are purposes to use social media. And as Christine said, we have to work and scaffold. That's an educational and psychological term for building kind of a base for our kids to find things to do away from devices. A great example, and some of you may have heard of 1K Hours. It's actually a website. You can Google it and go to a website initiative that is really based on tracking and making a game of finding 1,000 hours outside for children, for adolescents, whether it's a bike ride, a walk, working in your garden, doing anything. Can you move the painting easel out to the deck to get kids outside? We as parents have a responsibility, to create things for them to do that have a variety. As Christine said, our children learn best when they're exposed to a variety of people in a variety of situations and circumstances. So sometimes we have to get creative ourselves to find up something new for them to do. Maybe it's kayaking this summer. Maybe it's every night after dinner, we're just going to go on a bike ride, or we're going to walk around the neighborhood. Find something to do together that is screen free. Give them an alternative. And Christine can talk a little bit more about the developmental side of this. And please, Christine, jump in whenever you feel like it. One of the things I think we as parents rush into when it comes to technology is the question I always get, and some of you may have already asked this in the chat: what is the best age for a child to start with technology? My answer is, you're the adult, you're the parent, you know your child. What's the best age for a child to start driving? Well, truth be told, we have a law for that one. We don't have a law for technology. But I know of some kids growing up in a farm community that they were driving tractors and vehicles around their farm at age 12 because they were ready to do that. So the point is, your child, and their habits, and what they might be ready for. So some things you have to have in place, to be honest, before you give them a phone, I would say does your child have a good balance of activities that they're doing? Are they sitting inside gaming all the time? Or they're gaming a little bit, but they're also outside because they're involved in basketball or soccer and they enjoy doing other things? So I would argue, before you go out and buy your child another device, look at the habits and kind of what they're already doing with their life. Because the smartphone, again, as a tool, is going to become a reflection of what they're already doing. If they're spending 12 hours a day gaming, what do you think they're going to be doing with their smartphone? They're just going to be gaming again. The habits they form that they have before will remain after they have a smartphone. Christine, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's also, something that we've kind of been talking about is this price for convenience. And I think that what feels like something that's going to make your life easier, I think can actually make your life a lot harder. So there's a couple different scenarios that I could see playing out. One is that your child gets a smartphone, whether they're ready or not, but then you're policing another device, and now they've got something that's taking their attention away from whatever it is that they, maybe should be doing, but is not as preferred, whether it's homework or schoolwork or chores or other activities. So it might create added pressure on you as the parent, because now you have something else that you've got to take away or you've got to limit. And I think the other side that probably would lead to better outcomes is to have a plan in place before you get it. and to sit down with your child and say, all right, we're going to try this. We're going to see how it goes, but there's going to be certain rules. I'm the one who's paying for this. You're living here. This is a rule, just like we have rules for other things, household rules. And you can have the phone at these times. Maybe if you build it in as a reward system, you can earn extra time on your phone for doing your chores. If you sweep the kitchen, that's an extra 5 minutes, and you can bank your extra minutes and use them all at the end of the week, or you can use them as you get them. And at night, all of our phones, and this probably would be best to include parents too, all of our phones are going to be downstairs in the kitchen charging. Or when we eat dinner, everyone's phone goes in this basket. Or I loved Mark's idea too, using those times when your kids are held captive in the car and they can't run away from you as opportunities to talk to them. But that's going to mean that when we're in the car, we all put our phones in the same place. And getting back to this modeling good behavior, I was with my mom in the car the other day, and she's like, put your phone down, you're driving. And so we're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of practicing unsafe behaviors while we're driving, but we don't want to be modeling that for our teenage kids who are getting ready to drive as well. So getting into these good habits yourself is also going to model those good habits for your kids, but it is hard. It is a lot of work. Nothing that we're talking about here is easy, and you have to be intentional about it. So everything that we're discussing, I feel like, is increasing your workload as a parent with dealing with technology and screen time.
I love that you said that. I don't think most parents think of that. I think a lot of parents, and not because they're bad parents, I think a lot of parents think a smartphone is a great gift. Here, we're going to give this to my child as a birthday gift, as a Christmas gift. Here you go. And then we say, good luck, go figure it out. But we would never do that. Would we ever in a million years hand our kids keys to a car on their 16th birthday and say, here's the keys to your car, good luck, go figure out how to drive? No, they've probably done at least a year, maybe more, of practicing, learning how to drive, those types of things. But for some reason with smartphones, and I think a lot of parents just don't think about it. They think, well, I'm going to get my kid this phone. It'll be a great idea. But you have to have a plan in place. A couple of things really quick to remember is social media is not designed to be child or teen friendly. It's actually designed to mimic a slot machine, the same action, the same addictive action and colors and noises that slot machines have at casinos, because it does have a dopamine effect. And Christine will share a little bit more about that. That's her wheelhouse more than mine. But social media and likes and seeing people respond, our brains get that heroin high when we see that because of a chemical called dopamine. The other thing you have to remember, adolescents try to be funny at all costs. It's why they laugh at fart jokes. Okay. I've spent a lot of my education career in middle school. One of my biggest phrases as a middle school principal and administrator was, did you think before you did that? And you know what the answer always is? No, nope, didn't think at all. I just did it. And they try to be funny. They try to impress their friends. And that does not go hand in hand with 24/7 on the internet. They try to seek attention. They do crazy things. The other thing is kids believe what they see online. And we have to help them to discern the information that they're bringing. Realities of the adolescent brain, we've shared about that. It really does not fully develop until after the age of 21. Risk-taking, high impulse control, that does not go well with a lot of the social media apps and things out there when kids are left to their own. All of this to say, along with being voyeuristic society, that everything is being posted and taking pictures of. We as parents need to have habits and rules in place and have those conversations before we put a phone in their hands.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about brain development. I told you a little bit about the basics of what happens early on when the brain is really going through these rapid periods of development, but that happens throughout childhood, adolescence, and into early adulthood. So just to give a little bit of kind of background on the brain, you can see this little picture of the brain down here. And what we're thinking about the most when we're talking about adolescence into early adulthood is this part of the brain that's this pink area here, called the frontal lobes. And the frontal lobes do not fully develop until early adulthood. So typically for men, this happens a little bit later than for women. And this can happen into your mid to late 20s. So, I mean, this is a time in people's lives when, maybe you've gone to and graduated from college. Maybe you've gotten your first job. You're living on your own. You're probably not living with your parents anymore, or are at an age where you could be living independently. But still, that part of the brain that's responsible for judgment, decision making, personality, emotional control, behavioral control, that part of the brain is not developed yet. And what I will say to parents all the time is think back to when you were a teenager. Because I know for me, there were things that I did as a 15, 16, 17-year-old that I look back on now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so lucky that I'm alive, because I was putting myself at risk. I might have been putting my friends at risk, because that part of your brain that is responsible for controlling impulses, controlling your behavior, is not fully developed yet. I think of it as almost like a light bulb moment when you reach that point of time when your brain is fully developed. You think back to the rules that your parents had, and you're like, that's why they didn't want me doing X, Y, and Z, because they were the smart ones and I had no idea what the risks were with doing these types of things. And that's why it kind of blows my mind, and Mark had kind of alluded to this, that 16-year-olds can drive. Because again, I was a really good kid, really into school, and yet some of the things I did, especially when I was driving, were so idiotic, and I didn't have a phone tethered to me at all times. So, I think these are really important things to keep in mind. And again, thinking back to what you might have been doing as a teenager or a young adult, and the decisions that you made, and now what you see with your kids, because it's important to understand that their brain isn't there yet. And they might be very smart. They might make good decisions in some ways, but understanding that impulse control is not fully developed is really important.
So we want to encourage you today to start thinking ahead of time. And I don't want those of you that have older teenagers and you're already sitting here going, oh my gosh, I've screwed up. My child has had a phone for 3 years and I've had no rules. I've had no habits. The fact that you're here is wonderful, because it tells us you're interested. And as long as you just start to do something, okay, with your child. Yes, I acknowledge if your teenager has developed bad habits, it's going to be a little harder work. But you're still the parent. They still need you to guide them through this. And you just start small. I do want to say this at this point. One of the worst things, and Christine and I are both on the same page with this, you can do is to straight away, unless it's a life or death situation, take the phone away. Taking the phone away 100% will drive your teenager to sneak behind your back and to start doing things that way, because it is such a part of their life right now. So you will want to limit what they do, but still, you need to still give them time, even if it's 30 minutes, an hour a day, to do social media and connect with their friends, because it is such a social part of a teenager's life right now. It may not mean that they have their phone at night with them. It may not mean that they get to take their phone when they're out driving, because they've had issues with that. But one of the worst things you can do is just totally take the device 100% away. You have to scale it back. So the questions we want you to ask is not, does my child want a phone? The question is, are they ready for a phone? The same way about driving, same way about drinking, the same way about dating, the same way about sending your child to summer camp for a week. The question has to be, are they ready? Are they developmentally and emotionally ready to handle this next step? We prepare our children to do a lot of things, and it's something called gradual release. It's where we give them, I didn't send my 17-year-old in the car, to go see grandma and grandpa in Florida on her first trip. Okay. I sent her around the neighborhood. I sent her 2 miles to drop her sister off at school. And for those of you that haven't done that, that is a terrifying feeling as a parent, when you're standing in the driveway trying to smile and wave to your daughter when your other daughter is in the car with them and they're backing out of the driveway for the first time. It is a very proud parent moment, but it is also a terrifying parent moment. But the point is, you have to release them at some point to do some of these things on their own, but it also has to be gradual. We naturally follow these rules when it comes to bike riding. When you were teaching your child to ride a bike, you probably started with a tricycle. then use training wheels. You didn't throw them on a 10 speed and say, hey, go for it. Okay. We worked up to that. Same thing with dating. Same thing with, are they able to travel alone? We need to follow the same habits and practices when it comes to technology and social media. Gradual release.
I think something that's so hard, and it was really interesting because before we had put this talk together, Mark and I and other members of the team had a meeting where we discussed these things. And again, I have two very young children, and every morning my 3-year-old comes into my room before I'm ready to get up in the morning, and he says, Mommy, can I get on your phone? So I hand over my phone, let him do whatever he wants. He's 3, he watches YouTube Kids. Some of the videos are very strange, but he doesn't get into big trouble on it. He can't really figure out how to buy things, and what he's doing is very innocent. And as we were talking, and other people in our planning group had older children, I realized that time when technology use goes from being very innocent and not really knowing what you're doing to shifting over and being more risky, I think happens before we realize it as parents. So just like Mark had mentioned, it's kind of fun when you have young kids and you give them the iPad and you're like, whoa, you can do more on this than I can. Like, how cool is that? But I think that they're going to surprise us with how early on in childhood they are capable of doing things that would surprise us. And so getting back to what Mark is saying, we really want to prepare them for that from an early age. And you might feel like, wait, my child is on my phone all the time and they're very capable. They're very used to having it, but giving them that full independence with their own device or not having enough supervision, I think can be really challenging. And so I like the idea of this gradual release. And again, thinking, this might have to happen sooner. We might have to think about these things earlier than we would expect.
Exactly. And the idea is mentoring. It's we as parents have to have conversations and walk them through this. The statistics show that by 6th grade, 90% of 6th graders have already viewed hardcore pornography online. It's just so prevalent. And we as parents can say, oh, that's not true. Oh, that's not my kid. But the statistics don't lie. And I will tell you, being a middle school principal, the statistics are true. I'm actually thinking it's higher than 90%. So the question is not, when is my child going to see this online? The question is, how are we as parents going to mentor them and prepare them for what they're going to see online? We need to understand and have that conversation with them, even though it's a little awkward for us. When your child's getting to that upper elementary level, they're going to be interested in, curious, and the internet has things on it that will pop up and you don't have to do a lot of looking to find it. We need to be the parent in that and mentor them through those times so that they don't feel awkward, so they don't feel like they've done something wrong. We need to keep the lines of communication open so that when our kids have questions about technology or about life, they feel like they can come to us. That's the key. And that's the key to technology, is keeping those lines of communication open and being honest with each other.
Mm-hmm. And I think the flip side of that too is that if I've worked with parents before who have seen some things that their kids were looking at and were horrified, and the feeling was, I'm taking it all away. I'm taking away the phone, I'm taking away the computer, I'm taking everything away. And I think that a lot of times that can have the opposite effect that we're looking for. I think having an open conversation with maybe your teenager about pornography is probably much more aversive to them and is going to make them think long and hard about their behaviors and what you might have access to than taking it all away. Because if you take it all away and never talk about it again, then they're going to get on their friend's phone, or it's going to become something that they are even more interested in because now they can't do it. And I loved one of the parents in this planning group. She said that she's done that with her teenager. She's had a conversation with them about this. And I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine. I'm my 2 little sweet, innocent boys. And, probably before I'm ready, we're going to need to be having those conversations that are going to be, I think, awkward for everyone involved. But that's the necessary evil that we're dealing with right now.
Video games are a big media source for our kids. Video games were fun when I was growing up. We played Atari, we played Nintendo, but that's no different. But video games have a very interesting effect. And Christine, this is where kind of that dopamine effect gets in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like Mark was saying before, it really comes down to those reward centers in the brain. Dopamine is what's called a neurotransmitter, which basically means it's a chemical that is produced in the brain, and certain activities, certain drugs, certain things that are very rewarding can produce more of that dopamine. And when you get that, you want more of it. And so social media, lots of technology, video games, all are kind of built around how do we get people to use more of this? We want people to be on this longer. We want people to pay more money for it. We want people to essentially become addicted or obsessed with some of these things because it's a business. And that's what the makers are looking for, is how do we get somebody to sit down and not be able to put the game controllers down? And so when we think about, you know, the effects of gambling, it's kind of this, you don't know when you're going to win. And that gives you a big rush when you do win. And that's really what we see with video games as well. But again, just like we've talked about with everything, it doesn't mean take it all away. Don't let your kids have access to video games because it's like gambling or it has a negative effect. But use them responsibly, have limits built in. Say, okay, you're going to be on this for an hour and then we're going to go do this. And I think that a couple of things. One, the earlier you can set those limits and create the schedule and create that balance for your children, the easier it's going to be to stick to it. If you have a no phone in the car policy from day one, your kids are going to get older. They're going to know we just always put our phone in this basket when we're in the car. It's just what we do. It's never too late to enact one of those, but what you might see is an uptick of negative behavior. If you have been in survival mode this whole pandemic and your kids just have access to everything, kind of like my kids have, and then all of a sudden you say, all right, I'm cutting back. We're going to only do this for an hour a day. You might see more negative behaviors and more pushback because they're trying to get to the thing that they want, which is just behavior and how kids are with anything, technology or otherwise. And that's normal. But being prepared for that kind of burst of behavior when you make a change, just stick to it and be consistent. And the other thing I'll say is if you feel like I can't right now, I need this. I know that the effects of video games and social media might not be great for my kids right now, but I am still in survival mode. I'm working from home. I'm doing these things. I need this as a tool. That's okay. You don't have to make a big change if you don't feel like you're at a point where you can do that as a parent right now. You know, the effects that we're talking about are not like life and death here. It is okay. But just be honest with yourself and be realistic with setting expectations for you as a parent too.
In 2017, researchers looked at the effect of cell phone presence on students. Students were asked to complete math problems with their cell phones placed on their desks, stashed in nearby bags or clothing, or left behind in separate rooms. They turned off ringtones, buzzing, pings, the works. In fact, students didn't interact with or hear their phones at all. But it didn't matter. The phone continued to exert a powerful influence, occupying the students' mental space, even as they ignored it. Students performed worse when the phone was nearby on the desk. And no, it didn't matter if they turned it face down. They didn't fare much better when the phone was hidden in a bag or a pocket. Physical separation from the phone produced the best outcomes. So, what's the new insight here? It looks like the mere presence of our phones might be triggering a neural system called automatic attention. That's a brain system that unconsciously monitors the environment for signs of critical importance. It screens out irrelevant information, but snaps us to attention when someone calls our name, for example, an infant cries, or a police siren wails. In other words, our phones, with their constant pings and buzzes, may be tripping some of our deepest mission-critical wiring, creating a persistent sense of urgency even when the phone is completely off or stored away, and draining away precious cognitive resources that could be used for tasks like studying. What can be done about all this? The researchers concluded that intuitive fixes like placing the phone face down or turning it off were futile. And that's a direct quote. Actual physical separation from the phone was the only effective solution. That's true when your students are taking tests, of course, but the research says that physical separation is even more crucial when they're initially trying to learn something.
So Christine, anything to add to that? That's right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, what this really shows is how we can manage behavior by controlling the environment. And that's really what I'm all about with a lot of the kids that I work with, whether it's related to technology or other types of behaviors. And we can manage a lot if we can manage the environment. And I think what I really like that they point out in this video clip is that it's outside of our kids' control. It's outside of our control. I mean, my phone is sitting right next to my computer right now. And as we've been talking, I've gotten little alerts, and without even consciously realizing it, I'm looking down to see what it is. And so again, it's happening to all of us. It's how our brains are wired to do things. And technology and phones are so captivating that it's really, really hard to ignore that, because this automatic attention is kind of like attention that's outside of our physical or mental control. And so I think that, again, as parents, what we can do is saying, okay, you're doing homework right now, and the phone's going to have to be in a separate room. Everyone's phone is going over here. You know, again, I've worked with parents before where they have literally said, I've had a teenager saying to me, I wish that my family could all spend time together without my parents being on their phones. You know, and the parents came back and they said, well, she's always on her phone too. And it was so sad to me because one of the parents said, I cannot not have my phone on me because I might be missing an important call. And so again, I mean, this is something that we fall victim to as adults as well. But I think that getting the phone in a physical different space can really help our kids to more engage in the activities that we want them to engage in. Setting those expectations, those limits, those boundaries from an early age makes it easier, but it's not impossible to change. But I think having a conversation with your kids about that, whether they're 10, 11, 16, 17, and really what the goals are of doing the things that maybe we're trying to do is going to be really helpful. Maybe even sitting down with an older teenager and showing them a video like this and having a conversation about it. Isn't that crazy? Can you believe our brains do that when your phone's sitting right next to you? That happens to me all the time. Does that ever happen to you? Having those types of conversations, because what we want to be doing is building lifelong habits with our children. We want to be teaching them healthy technology use because they're going to have it the rest of their lives. So that's really what we're doing. We're shaping these behaviors now so that as they become adults, they aren't totally tied to their phone and it's keeping them from doing the things they need to do to be productive members of society.
Real quick before you jump in about sleep, I can tell you 100% parents, and my name is Mark and I'm your friend. You want your child to pay more attention at school, stop texting your child at school. Parents are the number one texters of their kids at school. Okay. You want your child to be safe in the car, stop texting them when you know they are driving. We have to change our habits as well. I know we love having access to our kids, but I'll be honest, my daughter's almost 20. You got to cut the cord. Having all the time access to your child is not a good thing. They know you're coming to pick them up. You don't have to text them to say you're going to be 5 minutes late. They know you will be there. It's amazing that we survived growing up. There were times I had to wait at school a whole hour for my mom to pick me up because she was in a traffic jam, and I survived. Our kids don't have to know every single detail. And likewise, we don't have to know every single detail about them at all times. Parents are just as guilty. We're the number one texters of our children, and we can help just by being aware.
I'm taking notes right now for myself when my sons get older, Mark, because I think that those are going to be things that I'm going to have to be aware of. And, what has just been so enlightening to me is the conversations that we have had, kind of preparing for this presentation, because it's made me realize how little I have thought about technology use with my kids as they get older. And I could totally see myself falling victim to that. Hey, real quick, you forgot this at home. Do you want me to bring it up to you? Or good luck on your test today. And, the intentions are good, but I love hearing, Mark, your perspective as an educator and how disruptive that can be, and really how all of this kind of fits together with what we know about brain development, brain functioning, and, technology with our kids. So something that I wanted to touch on was sleep, because this is a huge factor in terms of technology use. And I am all about, what do we know from the research? What do we know about the actual kind of physiology of the brain, and how does that drive what we're doing and the recommendations that we're making. So use of technology can delay sleep, and this can happen in a few different ways. First of all, you're going to stay up longer when you're doing something that is captivating, playing games, chatting with friends. I consider YouTube to be a rabbit hole where you watch one video and then it goes to the next video and the next video and the next video. And pretty soon you have spent an hour and a half watching videos and staying up too late. Also, the blue light from the devices can keep our brains awake because that light is basically saying, stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. And stimulating activities tell your brain that exciting things are happening. And this is not time to sleep. I kind of think about this as like brain FOMO, or fear of missing out. Like there's something that I need to stay awake for because I might miss something. And this is, I can almost guarantee for all of us here, and myself included, this is something that we fall victim to as adults. And our brains are fully developed. And so if you think about a teenager who doesn't have good impulse control, or somebody who maybe has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, where they have a terrible sense of time, they don't realize how much time they have spent using technology, watching videos, being on TikTok. And so their sleep is getting further delayed. So what can you do? A big thing is turning off electronics, getting away from electronics 30 minutes before bed. Now, again, I feel like half of this presentation is do as I say, not as I do. My in-laws were over the other night helping my husband when I was out of town. And he said that his mom was getting on his case because our 3-year-old was in front of the TV right before he was about to head up to bed. And I kind of defended it by saying, well, our bedtime routine takes about an hour. So he had plenty of screen-free time as he was stalling and coming up with ways to get out of going to bed. Relaxing before bed is great. A calming music, a bath, something like that. And again, putting phones in a central location, keeping them down in the kitchen, having a family charging station where everybody puts their phones. You are not going to miss something critical overnight. I often put my phone on do not disturb anyway, so I'm not missing anything. And you can model that for your kids as well.
In addition to sleep, some other things that that we have is eye fatigue, vision issues. I'm seeing more and more students unable or unwilling to have face-to-face social issues. I see a very big rise in the inability for students to have constructive criticism conversations. They don't know how to talk about tough issues or to ask tough questions. Honestly, sometimes even to make tough phone calls, or I'm working with seniors in internships, and a lot of my students, they're just really uncomfortable making a phone call to anybody that they don't know. And those are learned skills that social media is making tougher. They don't unplug emotionally. Procrastination, let's be honest, that YouTube rabbit hole, I love that too. And it can keep us from doing the things we should be doing, like sleeping, studying, spending time with our family, cleaning the garage, you name it. There is an element of physical safety and danger, particularly with the internet. There's a lot of anonymity out there where you don't know that people are who they say they are, and they assume other identities online. There is stalking that goes on. There are adults out there posing as children on a lot of gaming sites, a lot of social media sites, and they're dangling bait out there waiting for an adolescent that maybe has some questions or maybe is not feeling great about themselves to pounce on. And these are just things to be aware. I don't want to put the fear of God into you, but we have to be aware that predators are also out there. We talked about pornography. That's just a reality. Almost half of the internet sites are devoted to pornography, which is hard for people to understand, but it is a $1 billion a year industry. And ID theft. The more information we put out online, think about all the sites that have access to your credit card right now. If you really think about that as an adult, it's a little scary. Our credit card numbers are out there in dozens of places. And if our accounts, which they are tied to our children's, that means our children are putting our credit card numbers out there as well. So these are issues that as parents, again, back to our original point, have a plan in place before these things happen. You need to be aware of them, have a plan in place, and release your child to work with these things gradually over time as they prove that they can handle it.
Mm-hmm. And I think in some ways, I think we are at a greater advantage now than maybe parents who had teenagers just as technology was really booming and, you know, the first iPhone was coming out and that kind of thing, because we know about these risks. So you can have conversations with your children about these things. You know, I think that just like Mark said, this isn't meant to scare people into avoiding technology at all costs because of these risks. It's like anything else that we do with our kids, you know, teaching them, talking with them about safe behavior when it comes to kind of all aspects of life. And now technology is just added in there. And again, we know about these risks now, so we're able to do something to try to prevent them versus being on the other side where maybe we were like 10 or 15 years ago, where we weren't really aware of what all the possible risks and dangers were.
A great quick story. I can't help myself. So I was at Carr Middle School, and teachers were very, very worried because we had a number of young men, a number of boys that were sneaking away from class, sneaking away from lunch, and meeting up in the bathrooms. So I was like, oh my gosh, okay, we got to get on this. And I was sure it was pornography or it was drugs or it was, you know, something like that. They were sneaking away from class and sneaking away from lunch to meet in the restroom to discuss strategies for Fortnite strategies. So again, I was glad it wasn't drugs. I was glad it wasn't pornography, but truth be told, they were still sneaking. They were still missing class, but it was over a game. And I think as parents, you can go, okay, I'm glad that's all it is. But the point is, it's still a distraction. It's still keeping them from their primary focus at school. So just a fun story I like to tell, one of my many as my time as at the middle school level. Love these quotes. And I think it's just good reminders for us. Again, I feel like I'm going to leave this talk today much wiser again, even though Christine and I put it together. These are great reminders to myself. Being famous on Instagram is the same thing about being rich in Monopoly. It's fake. It really doesn't matter. And we have to teach our children about what does matter. Bill Murray, great quote, social media is training us to compare our lives instead of appreciating who we are. It's designed to say, well, I don't do that, and I don't travel there, and I don't drive this car. And because you have to remember, and we have to teach our kids, people don't post the negative online. They post the absolute best things they're doing. And we look at that and think, oh, that's normal. Oh, everyone out there is driving a Porsche at age 16. No, they're not. We need to just appreciate who we are, who our kids are, and where we are in life. Social media can also trap you when you think every moment, every conversation I have to be part of. And sometimes, like Christine said, put it away and just be still. Put it away and just enjoy being with your family, or to be honest, being alone. I think we as adults and kids need to also teach one another and our kids that it's okay just to be quiet, just to be still, not to have any distractions for 10, 15 minutes, and just to relax and not have anything bothering us. So just some great reminders. Christine and I have both said this, but I think it's important to put it in print. Parenting's hard. I think a lot of times people think that Christine or I, as experts in psychology and development and education, can just tell you what to do. And truth is, we're parents too. And there's no single piece of advice, single app, single tool that is going to make parenting easier. Parenting is the hardest, but it is one of the best things I get to do in this life. Because I love our kids. We all love our kids, and we want to help them be the best people that they can be. And that comes by mentoring. It comes by mentoring them through technology, comes by mentoring them when they get broken up with, that first date, that first love, mentoring them after a car accident, all of those things, the good, the bad, the ugly. You just have to embrace it and understand it's going to be hard, but we'll get through it. We need each other, and we need more talks like this that are honest. I'm going to put all these up just so you can see them all. And we've kind of hit on these. So just some tips as we start to wrap things up. Lines of communication open. Start early and talk to your children often about technology and how you use it. Model that behavior, be accessible, be open. And you can do that and still discipline kids when appropriately. Good discipline is open, honest conversation. It's not reactionary. It's not an impulse because you're angry. Walk away. If you find out your child is doing something online that you disapprove of, take a deep breath. Remember you love them. Remember they love you. And then go back with a clear head and come up with a strategy so that they learn what they did was wrong and inappropriate. But there's a way back. We never want kids to feel like there's no hope. My parent doesn't love me. They're not working with me. You can't always be your child's friend. You can be friendly with your child, but you need to be their parent first and foremost. Children and teens strive in a structured environment with rules and boundaries and discipline when appropriate. It's our job to guide them and help them. So our advice, once again, is even if you're looking at this and going, oh my gosh, I have so much to do, don't jump in with everything. Start with just one thing. Just one thing. After you've hugged your child and told them you love them, then say, you know what, we're going to try something and we're going to try this together. We're going to not have our phones out at dinner at all. Try that one thing and see how it goes and build from there. And last tip, it's perfectly okay and perfectly acceptable to tell your child no. You know, we're not just going to do that. You don't have to always tell them why. Sometimes you can just say, because I want your attention on me. I want your attention on what we're doing right now. I don't want your attention on your phone. So can you please put that away? That's okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing too, we've talked about or kind of touched on things to do when your child does not comply or how to discipline and that kind of thing. But the other thing that I'll say too is one of the best ways to see behavior that you want to see is by praising and acknowledging positive behavior. So if you tell your child, okay, you've got 10 more minutes on your iPhone and 10 minutes is up, and you tell them, all right, your time is up, and they put their phone down, that's a great opportunity to praise them and say, I really love how you put your phone down without complaining. That was so awesome. Thank you so much. Or just like Mark was saying, hey, I want you to put your phone down for a second. And they say, why? Well, I'd really like it if we could have a conversation and I'm putting my phone down. So I'd like to put your phone down too, so that we can pay attention to one another. And if they do, thank you for doing that. Thanks so much. Now we can have a conversation. Or, if you're going to do a fun activity or something like that, really any behavior that you want to see more of as a parent, if you acknowledge that, praise that, reward that, you're going to see more of that behavior. I think too often we end up attending to the negative behavior, which then reinforces that behavior because kids want our attention constantly. And so good attention, bad attention, it doesn't always matter which is which.
Another tip we talked a lot about, mentor and monitor. Okay, I think a lot of people monitor, but I'm not sure they also mentor. Mentorship should be your first rule as a parent. Show them. And here's another thing. When you screw up, when you don't do it right, when you're unattentive on your phone and your child is tugging at your leg saying, mommy, daddy, I need you, apologize to them. One of the most powerful things I've learned as an adult, as a teacher, and as a parent is when I screw up, look at your child and say, I'm sorry. I did not do this well. I need to get better at this. There is nothing wrong with that. It will absolutely build the trust and the love between you and your children. Provide clear expectations. Let your child know the rules. And I love the idea of praising. Rewards are way more powerful than negative. You get about at least a 2-to-1. Some studies say as much as a 4-to-1 benefit by using a reward system. And I think when we hear the term discipline, we immediately think to the negative, but rewards are a key part of discipline. At times you have to stop, but at times you have to give. Don't wait for a problem to arise. Try to get ahead of it and get to know your phone. And I know this is tough for some parents, but if you don't understand the things Verizon and AT&T offer, they all have apps and monitoring systems that you can install on your child's phone. Let me correct that. On your second phone. It's not your child's phone. Until they are 18 and buy their own phone and sign their own contract, everything they do on their phone belongs to you and you own it. So walk into a Verizon and say, I'm a parent. I'm getting ready to buy a phone for my child. What things do you have that I can put in place to help monitor what they're doing? Okay, have that conversation before you ever hand the phone over. And set up family accounts. Family accounts are wonderful. I approve every app that my 17-year-old gets on her phone. And before I approve it, we also have a conversation about why she needs it. And she has to be able to tell me how this is going to actually help her and improve her life, not just be another distraction. So have those family accounts set up and use them. Well, Christine talked a lot about this. You want to take some of these, Christine?
Yeah, definitely. So again, I think having the full family limiting technology during family times or during times when you say, all right, we're not having phones in front of us right now. And this might be that you're going to sit down and watch a family movie together, but everyone's going to put their phones away. Protect sleep and those down times. Have a plan and in place, rules to shut down technology at night. Again, putting the phones in a separate room is going to be the most effective. And then the other thing that I love, and as Mark had said, I think both of us are walking away from this presentation having learned something, and we're going to give it again this evening. And I think we'll probably learn more when we go through it a second time as well. And what I have loved about this opportunity is what I've learned from other parents and people who are in different fields than I am. So contact your children's friends, discuss what your rules and expectations are with them. If you're going to have your child's going to invite some friends over and you don't want them to have phones for part of that time, let the other parents know that. Let them know that's what the expectation is when they come over. I will often say this to parents as well. If you were driving and you got pulled over and the police officer just came up with a random reason that he pulled you over and the amount of money that you were going to have to pay, you'd be pretty upset because you'd be like, well, I didn't know that going 10 miles over was going to cost me $1,000. That's not the rule. That's not how this works. And we have to do that with our kids too. Setting clear expectations for what you expect from their behavior and how you're going to respond if you don't see that behavior can go a really long way and gives you something to fall back on. So we all want to be on the same page. We want to be working together as a team, whether this is across us together as adults and parents, but also with our kids and our families as well.
These are just some of the resources that I have used and I'm familiar with. There are many, many more. I try not to share specific things as much because in technology, things are always changing. But I have personally used Life 360. It's an app that you can put on your phone, particularly if you have a driver. It shows exactly where they're going and even tells you how fast they got there. Again, don't punish them if they're driving too fast. Have a conversation with them. Smart Family, Verizon Smart Family is wonderful. It is the best $9.99 I spend every month because it not only allows me to set limits on what my children are doing. You can do the same thing through Apple, through Screen Time. Secure Family is one that AT&T uses. I'm not familiar with it, but my point is all of our providers, they work for us. We are paying good money to Verizon, to AT&T, to Apple to have their devices. If you want to know how something works, go into the Apple store. They have people that would be very happy to show you how to set up a family account if it's something you're not comfortable doing. Remember, they work for us. They make billions of dollars off of us. We are the customer. We can have control. Don't be afraid to ask. Same thing with this slide. A lot of parents want to know, well, what apps to avoid? And again, these are always changing. The apps that are scary and good one day go away and then something new pops up. So I would rather talk about this, spend just a minute going over this. When your child is adding an app to their phone, a couple things you have to worry about. Number one, if there are not privacy settings, don't add the app. If you cannot go in and change the settings and make sure that they can be private, no need to have it. You want to be worried about apps that are anonymous or at least have that perceived anonymity. Snapchat for years and years and years had that. Nothing good online happens anonymously. If you can't put your name to it, I would be worried about it. An overuse of pictures or videos. I'm not saying don't do this, but I'm saying be aware of it. If your child is adding an app like Instagram, they're going to be posting pictures and videos online. And you need to be aware of that as a parent. You need to make sure your child is ready for that. The promise of temporary posts. You need to understand and explain to your child that nothing is temporary. We all can screen capture and take a screenshot of anything, even if it's only online for 5 seconds. There's nothing temporary. It all stays forever. Be worried about apps that share GPS. If you can't go in and change the settings, you need to be worried, because that means your child's whereabouts can be can be tracked through the app. Comments and opinions are always dangerous because of that impulse control. Again, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying be aware. Be aware of apps that allow that. The distraction piece. What value does this app actually bring to my child's life? The truth is, every app has a risk. Does the risk reward come out on the side you want it to? You know, is your child's Instagram account worth them sharing private pictures of themselves? Okay. And I know they're sitting here going, but mom, all my friends have Instagram and that's how they used to talk. Okay, that's fine. But understand, your child is opening up themselves to an entire new world, to be looking at pictures and videos from every person on Instagram that they're attached to. Another bit of advice: the first person your child needs to connect with on Instagram or on any social media app is you. If you are not connected with your child and they are not connected with you, and vice versa, don't give them the app. If they can post it, you should be able to see it. Just some information. Facebook is still by far the worldwide most popular app as of January 21. The one I want to single in on is one that worries me. Look at the third most popular app in the world. It's an app called WhatsApp, and it is a third-party texting app. Okay. In my opinion, this is one area where I will step outside my normal box. In my opinion, as an educator, there is no valid reason for a child to have a third-party texting app. Last time I checked, every phone that I'm aware of can text. They can group text. They can do all of that. There's a lot that is very hard to track through third-party texting apps that Verizon and AT&T can't track through their regular phone usage. So unless it's something like Remind or Team Snap that I know schools set up to communicate to groups, there really is no reason for your child to be using a third-party texting app. Just let them text through the phone. That's what it's designed to do. There are some things that are safer for places for your child to earn some rewards and to demonstrate that they know what they are doing. Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube actually do a very, very good job of checking and filtering out the bad stuff. I'm not saying they're right for every child, but I'm saying these are sometimes places parents can start to give your child an opportunity to prove that they know what they're doing and they can handle it. You should still be careful about limiting and setting privacy settings. And again, like I said, you need to be the first person seeing what your child is posting. If they're posting it, they shouldn't hide it from you.
Hey, Mark, we did have a couple questions and I know we're coming up on time. So I wondered if I could just jump in and pose those. Would that work? Okay.
Yep. I will just stop sharing, and we got through the bulk of it. There's another video, but I think we captured just about everything that we needed to capture.
Okay. All right, great. There was a question about how kids today kind of have that lack of boredom because there are so many things that can entertain them, and using, you used to have to rely on your own imagination when that would happen. So what is that doing to brain development is the question.
I don't know exactly what that is doing to how the brain is actually developing. But I do think that it is leading to changes in behavior. And I think that if your child or you never have a time when you're just sitting kind of with nothing to do or you're bored, which I feel like never really happens, especially with having kids. I don't think there's ever really a time in my life. And I have trouble sometimes when I'm in the car and I'm like, I need to be doing something and I'm not doing anything, even though I'm driving. So I think that happens, I think that influences our behavior and kind of then what we need to fill that space. And so I think it's good to, just like we're talking about structuring things and setting limits, maybe to have times when you're like, all right, here's some activities that you could do that doesn't involve screen time. And also having your child embrace being bored and modeling that for them as well. Like, oh, wow, I have nothing to do right now. It's so nice to be bored. It's so nice to not have something that I'm doing right now. They're also, and I can look this up and put it in the chat box, or I can send to be shared with the group, but there was a really great webinar recently that one of my colleagues in pediatric psychology at Nationwide Children's Hospital did on boredom and really how to foster that with your kids. So let me see if I can find that. And then if I can find a link, I can put it in the chat box.
Okay, and if you can't, we can email it out, no problem.
Perfect. Great.
The one other thing, I think it was also for you, Christine, was what can we do to encourage healthy frontal lobe development in the brain?
Well, I think they're just going to kind of develop how they're going to develop, and there's going to be different factors that might kind of slow things down. So ADHD is a big one. Kids who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder tend to have difficulties with things that are controlled by the frontal lobes of the brain. So, there's not a lot of research that supports that there are, supplements or diets or that sort of thing that can really directly affect brain development. But I think that just the types of things that we strive to do to keep our kids healthy, having them get enough sleep at night, like we talked about with technology use and sleep, having them on a good schedule for sleep is a good healthy habit to develop throughout the rest of their life. Making sure they are eating a healthy diet where they're getting lots of different fruits and vegetables and nutrients and all that kind of stuff. That's going to help them just day to day, as well as building those healthy long-term habits. Exercise is great. Again, I think we know more about exercise when it comes to preserving brain function later in life. There's some really interesting studies that have come out with that. So thinking about how do I get my child in the habit of being really physically active and finding ways to do that, like Mark had mentioned, with the initiative to get more hours outdoors. Those are great things to do. So I think about it as more building healthy habits that they're going to rely on as they're getting older. And if things become habit and routine, we don't really have to think about doing them. We don't have to rely on those underdeveloped frontal lobes because you've built a routine, you've built structure into your child's life. So I think those would be the biggest things that I could think of. Hopefully that's helpful.
Along those same lines, this is a different, not as a scientific of an answer, but I will tell you from spending the bulk of my career working with adolescents, what helps the development is time. The frontal lobe develops over time. And this quote is wonderful. Teenagers have it rough, and the parents of teenagers sometimes have it rough. That's just the truth. Even when your kids are great, the teenage years are hard. And sometimes as parents, we just need to be calm. We just need to be patient. We need to be their cheerleader. We need to let them know we love them, that we're there, that we want to be part of their lives, that we give guidance even when they don't want to hear it. And I think Christina said this so wisely. We need to remember back when we were kids, and we need to let our teenagers know they're not weird. This is normal. How you're feeling is how you are supposed to feel. I am your parent and I'm going to help you through this.
I think that's great. There was one question, if they could, I appreciate you throwing up the resource. What was the video we missed? Can we see what that link was in case anyone's curious to go watch that final video?
The final video is actually a spoken word video. It doesn't have a lot of content. I can send the link to you via email.
Okay.
It is very short. It's only about 2 minutes long, but it's more of a motivational video that just talks about put the devices down and experience the moments of life.
Okay.
That I put it in for myself, because if we as parents can do that, we're going to help our kids do that, to really just take the time to intentionally unplug and spend some time with our kids and with our families.
All right. Well, great. Thank you so much, guys. I think this was, you guys made such good partners in sharing these different perspectives. I really feel like that brought it all home in a great way. So appreciate you guys taking the time today. And like I said, this will be posted on our YouTube channel. Unfortunately, I started us about 15 minutes late on the recording. I messed up in the beginning. So I apologize for that. But if you have a desire to have the whole thing, we will record tonight's as well. So never fear, there's always a second chance. Even if you make a mistake the first time, you'll get another chance to get it right.
Absolutely.
Thanks again to our presenters, and we will see you guys later.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.